The man who had no name, his identity was a mystery that the police believed would be impossible to solve. That was until 20 years later, when amateur internet sleuths on Reddit finally cracked the case. The young man's body had been found on June 26, 1995, at a gruesome scene just off of US Route 58 West. Tire tracks veering off the highway led to a smoking Vanagon that had smashed against a pair of large trees. 2 young men were found dead, partly ejected and hanging out of the windshield, their faces covered in lacerations. State Trooper Ted Jones arrived at the scene and searched the bodies for identification. The driver had ID, Michael Hager, a 21-year-old student at the University of South Carolina. The other young man in the passenger seat, wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt, had no identification and no belongings other than what was in his pockets: 4 quarters, a yellow Bic lighter, and 2 Grateful Dead ticket stubs. Depending on the source you read, a note was also found, either in his pocket or nearby, which read, "Jason, sorry we had to go. See you around. Call me." It was signed by Carolyn T. and Carolyn O. There was a drawing on the note believed to be of Jerry Garcia, the lead vocalist and guitarist of the Grateful Dead. A phone number was written on it, but it lacked an area code. The number was dialed, likely using local area codes, but it led to a dead end. Michael's family was notified. They were heartbroken, but they had no idea who the man in the passenger seat was. Officer Ted Jones concluded that the unidentified young man was probably a hitchhiker. When the autopsy was performed, no drugs were found in his or Michael's systems, leading Trooper Jones to believe the driver had simply fallen asleep at the wheel. This matched the scene, where the tire tracks had veered off the highway early, long before the crash point. When the unidentified passenger's fingerprints were submitted to the FBI database, there were no matches. Combined with the fact that his face was badly damaged from lacerations, identification was going to be very difficult. What they could determine was that he was between 15 and 21 years old, had brown eyes, and long curly brown or dark blonde hair that had been dyed a reddish hue. His teeth were well cared for, though there was no extensive dental work. He still had his wisdom teeth. Aside from the tie-dyed Grateful Dead t-shirt, he wore beaded and macrame necklaces, light blue Levi's jeans, and black Fila running shoes, size 11.5. His left ear was pierced, though no earring was present at the time. A scar was found on his back, a faded tattoo was noted on his right arm, and a homemade star tattoo was visible on his upper left arm. With nothing else to go on, Trooper Jones focused on the 2 Grateful Dead ticket stubs, which were dated for June 24 and 25, just 2 days before the fatal crash. Both concerts were held at RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C., about 180 miles north of the crash site. These shows would later become historically significant as they occurred just 2 months before the death of Jerry Garcia. Investigators traced the tickets and found they had been sold to a man from Pennsylvania, someone very much alive and not named Jason. That man turned out to be a scalper who had purchased 20 tickets and resold them. But when Trooper Ted Jones interviewed him, the Pennsylvania man couldn't recall who he had sold those specific tickets to. It was yet another dead end. There were plenty of clues, but no identity found on the side of the road, so let's discover where this road leads us and bring him home. What are you doing? Oh, just going over a case where a simple fatal car crash turned into a mystery that stumped investigators for decades. Who was this young man? Did he have a family? How long were they going to be left in the dark, wondering what happened to their boy? Here, let me take a look. Aha. After carefully analyzing all the evidence, I've concluded that he was a fan of the Grateful Dead, who just so happened to be the inspiration behind my heavy metal band, the Circuit Freaks. Incorrect statements detected. Number 1, it is not your band, it is a collaboration between you, myself, and the T-Tergrade. Number 2, the Grateful Dead is a band from the 60s that mixed rock, country, blues, jazz, and several other styles, none of which sound anything like heavy metal. If you're such a musical expert, then why are your vocals always so off-pitch? At least my rhythm is intact. Perhaps a drum machine would serve in your place. My cousin is available. You can't kick me out of the band, because I quit. Because this apparent love for the Grateful Dead was one of the only things known about him at the time, the unidentified man, or John Doe, as they're typically called, became known within web sleuth communities as the Grateful Doe. A clever pun, if I do say so myself. Since this Grateful Dead fan, or Deadhead, as they refer to themselves, was a hitchhiker and had bought tickets from a scalper for the 2 shows at RFK Stadium, one might theorize he was following the band on tour. Except, he was heading south from the stadium. The next tour location was in Michigan, northwest of the stadium. Well, where was he going then? It's not clear. Maybe to visit someone. Maybe they were making a detour. Let's look into the driver, Michael, and see if he can give us any clues. He was with his fiancée in Fairfax County, Virginia, when he left her that morning around 7:45 a.m. After traveling south, he stopped at his father's house in Williamsburg, Virginia, at noon. His father wasn't there, so Michael left a phone message saying that he was headed to visit his mother in Inman, South Carolina. But on the way there, he crashed on Highway 58. A neighbor of the father reported having seen a young man with Michael when he stopped at the house during the visit to Williamsburg. This would suggest that our Grateful Doe was picked up somewhere south of Fairfax, not too far from the Grateful Dead concert. It was believed they were both deadheads and likely shared a bond because of that, even though Michael hadn't attended the recent concerts. But according to the investigation from State Trooper Jones, Michael was alone when he visited his father's place. That doesn't make sense. The neighbor said another man was with him. Yes, that was reported in a Freelance Star article from 1996. But Jones claimed that was incorrect. If that's right, it would mean Grateful Doe actually hitched a ride somewhere between Gloucester and Emporia, much further south. Yep, not liking this Ted Jones guy. I mean, the Grateful Doe went to JFK Stadium for those concerts. Ain't that far from where Michael started? Yes, so wouldn't it make sense that's about where they met up? Not way down south at the end of the trip? Well, our Grateful Doe could have already hitchhiked further down when he met Michael. Regardless of where our Grateful Doe was picked up, the crash happened at around 1:30 p.m. that day, 90 minutes after Michael left his father's place. Okay, so we got a whole timeline now. What next? Surveillance footage. DNA sequencing? Super enhanced reflections off of someone's eyeballs. With cases like this, only so much can be done. At this point, with all the dead ends, Trooper Jones needed help from the public. They released all of the available information, but couldn't release a photo due to the lacerations. Another problem was that some news outlets reported him as a redhead, despite him only having red-dyed hair. This lowered the chances of identifying him significantly, since there was no actual image of him released. To make matters even worse, coverage of the crash only appeared in the Virginia area, even though it was suspected he might be from out of state. Now let me guess, nobody came forward? Exactly. Seriously? This whole thing feels like a bunch of fumbles. Not even a sketch or nothing? A forensic sketch was only released 7 months after the crash, at which time news outlets did report on it again. 7 months? Why so long? It's not clear why, and it was only reported in Virginia, right? Yep. Geez. Ted Jones wasn't doing nothing? While there may have been some fumbles, he was trying. Trooper Jones sent the description to all the police agencies in the country and received missing persons reports from 15 of them. He also sent the fingerprints to the Secret Service, which had a larger database than the FBI. The case information and sketch were mailed by him to news organizations in hopes of more coverage. But despite the hard work of Jones, nothing came out of those efforts. Jones said in an interview, "I investigated everything from every angle, and nothing ever panned out." Okay, maybe I'm being a bit hard on him, but I still feel like there could have been more done here. Well, from Jones' perspective, all he could do now was pass the investigation over to the state medical examiner's office in Richmond, Virginia, to compare the young man to missing persons case reports. And so, that's when the case went cold. And the Grateful Doe, whose first name may or may not have been Jason, would go unidentified for years to come. While the case files and evidence gathered dust and storage, the internet started to become a staple in homes around the world, connecting people like never before. It was a new era, with unknown possibilities and noisy modems. In 1999, the true crime community website WebSleuths and a missing persons website, the Doe Network, were launched. But it wouldn't be until the mid-2000s, nearly 10 years after the crash, when this case found a home on the internet. In 2004, a profile page for the Grateful Doe was created on the Doe Network. And in 2005, a user trying _to_ID posted about it on WebSleuths, asking for help. People who were moved by the story investigated and scrutinized all the details from the comfort of their homes. Sounds like your kind of people, bro. They absolutely are. Theories ran rampant. Some questioned if the note was even his, and if it. Some online sleuths questioned if the note actually said Jason on it. They also speculated that the unidentified young man may have been a runaway. Others wondered if his belongings had been stolen, which might explain why he didn't have any ID on him. The user trying _to_ID took charge of the investigation, a sort of vigilante detective, if you will. They also expressed frustration with law enforcement, writing, "He died over 10 years ago. They do not have time to help this young man, so why not release information to me? Someone that is willing to give any extra time I have to this young man." Yeah, one might agree, like if they had the phone number instead of that blurred out image. A bunch of people could have called tons of area codes. Well, someone else could reply, "It's likely for privacy reasons." Also, one might assume law enforcement can't just release evidence to any citizen that asks for it. An exception could have been made though. I mean, the police couldn't solve this case. But maybe these people could. They weren't the only ones to show frustration. A few online commenters pointed out things that Trooper Ted Jones could have done differently. One user suggested he should have gone to the next Grateful Dead concert and handed out flyers. But the issue was, at the time, the sketch of the unidentified man didn't even exist. It came about 7 months after the crash. Still, many users helped trying _to_ID. They took it upon themselves to compare the sketch and description to missing person reports. When they found someone who looked like a potential match, they posted it on the forums, and trying _to_ID would follow up by contacting the medical examiner in Virginia. But every time they thought they had something, fingerprint comparisons ruled it out. Then, a promising theory appeared. There was a group called the Wharf Rats. Hey, that's a pretty cool band name. They weren't a band, but a support group, kind of like AWE. It was spawned from the Deadhead culture. They'd go to concerts and hold sessions between sets to help members stay clean and live a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle. Oh, okay, that's actually cool. What's the theory? That Grateful Doe might have been one of them. Here's where things got interesting. The most prominent founder of the group, the one they called Mom, was named Carolyn Thomas. Carolyn T, just like the note. It sounded promising. A few of the web sleuths pointed it out, and trying _to_ID called her. Unfortunately, she said she wasn't the Carolyn T from the note. But, Carolyn Thomas? Caroline T? She was at all the concerts. She gave no explanation, but the web sleuths didn't think she had any reason to lie. After all, there are lots of Carolyn T's out there. HMPH, these theories are going nowhere. Not a single break. Nothing. For now. Luckily, the web sleuths were persistent. Carolyn Thomas eventually agreed to hand out information about the unidentified young man to all the deadheads she still knew from that era. At least that was something. Did any of them recognize him? Well, not necessarily, but getting the word out was important. Maybe they knew someone who knew someone. Come on, this thing is pointless. You seem angrier than usual. This meatbag demanded authorship credit on our new song Neon Storms. Yet there was zero contribution by said meatbag. I got a drum solo in it. And I'm the face of the band. 'Cause I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm the only one of us with a face. Excessive diva personality traits detected. Advising you to get over it. Right? Well, despite the efforts of these at-home detectives, years would pass, and hope would fade. Was anything stopping these communities from trying to solve this case? In 2012, it got another push, this time with the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They posted a new computer-generated image of the Grateful Doe on their website, using the autopsy photos as a reference. The recreation was more clear and realistic, but people were quick to note that it looked different from the original sketch. Many believed that the trauma to his face contributed to this discrepancy. Regardless, users spread the new image around, hoping someone might recognize him. That same year, a Facebook page was set up by users Alyssa and Lee. Like on web sleuths, the members put their detective hats on and dug into missing persons reports. But with all the dead ends they faced, more theories began to run wild. Some thought he could have been an abducted child, a foster kid, or maybe someone stole his identity while his family went on believing he was alive. That's why these two communities spent years looking for Grateful Doe's identity, driven by emotion, thinking, what if this had been their child? But despite all the effort, it was hard to hold on to hope. They needed a break in the case, or perhaps, they needed to break the internet. And that's exactly what happened. On New Year's Eve 2014, nearly 20 years after the crash, in an attempt to get more eyes on the Grateful Doe, a user by the name of Grey Metal put together a collage of all reconstructed images and some of the evidence, then posted it on Imgur. She wrote a heartfelt first-person post laying out all the details. "Do you recognize me? I have been without my name for nearly 20 years. In June of 1995, I was involved in a fatal car accident in Emporia, Virginia. The driver fell asleep at the wheel. He had his ID on him, but I didn't, and his family does not know who I am. For 20 years, no one has come forward to identify me. I have adopted the identity of the Grateful Doe. Maybe we went to school together, lived next door to one another, or maybe you saw me around town. Maybe you know of a missing person who fits my identity. Can you help me finish my journey?" Immediately, it went viral and made the front page of Imgur, which then prompted the creation of a dedicated subreddit to help spread the word even more. As a result, 2,000 people joined the Facebook group in a matter of days, tripling their numbers. Around that time, Grey Metal joined up with websleuthers, and as commenters started to pour in, she reported her findings to them and asked for their help. That one Imgur post sparked a fire like no other attempt before it. And now, 4 big internet communities, Imgur, Reddit, Facebook, and web sleuths, were working hard to crack the case and get more eyes on it. Yeah, there we go. Getting some momentum. Exactly. The Imgur post was exactly what this investigation needed. Leads started to pour in. A woman on Craigslist claimed to know the mother of a missing person named Jason, but that Jason turned out to be alive. Meanwhile, 3 other people said the sketches reminded them of a Jason or a Jay who was a Grateful Dead fan. The first lead came on Facebook. Someone claimed to have known a Jason they hung out with one summer a year or two before the crash in Myrtle Beach. He worked at a shop that sold a lot of Grateful Dead merchandise, but they didn't have much more information than that. No family, no other friends. The second lead came from web sleuths. One of the new users revealed they knew a Jay who was on tour with the Grateful Dead during the summer of 1995. He was very friendly, even if he was known to interrupt people a lot. He stayed at people's homes and got rides from friends to other Grateful Dead shows. This Jason had a wallet and a backpack. But again, the second lead didn't provide too much more information. Luckily, the third lead, which came from Reddit, was the most promising. A man came forward claiming that he and 2 of his friends were roommates with Jason in 1994 and 1995. They described him as a laid-back surfer dude from Myrtle Beach and a major deadhead, always talking about the band. He was 17 to 18 years old and worked at a McDonald's. He left in early 1995, and they lost contact with him. Despite these promising leads, the problem was that none of them remembered his last name after 20 years. But if this was our guy, then we at least knew he went by Jay, and he was from Myrtle Beach. That ain't nothing. Exactly. Every piece of information is helpful. And the search was picking up steam. With it, a new theory emerged. He was likely following the Grateful Dead tour, but when he somehow lost his wallet and backpack, whether stolen or forgotten, He decided to return home to Myrtle Beach, if that was indeed his home. Michael, the driver, would have been able to bring Jay part of the way there, as Michael was heading to Inman, South Carolina, only an hour's drive from Myrtle Beach. With these leads, the icing on the case came when one of the roommates submitted some photographs. The Jason in these photos had quiet eyes, half shut most of the time, with a bright smile that captured people's hearts. He especially looked like the original police sketches. But they'd been down this road before with plenty of missing persons who matched the sketches. This might not be the Jason they were looking for. The world is a big place. No, absolutely. And this is definitely a good lead. The communities believed they were so close to cracking the case. They wanted to know if this Jason was alive and well, so they spread the new photos online, and it turned even more viral. Gray Metal, along with Lisa and Alyssa, who ran the Facebook group, worked with the other users to follow up on these 3 leads and get the word out to Myrtle Beach. Plus, news outlets started to pick it up again. A few days later, a man came across this viral missing person post on Facebook and recognized the photos immediately. In shock, he called his mother, Margaretta Evans. And then she posted this in the Facebook group. "Oh my God, this is my son, Jason Callahan, from Myrtle Beach. I've been looking for him all this time with no luck. Today, my other son saw this Facebook page. And after all these years of praying for him to just call me or come home, please inbox a message or phone number to contact me. Holy Mother Mackerel, did we just find his family? Well, we confirmed that this Jason Callahan was missing, but not confirmed dead. Likely, the photos from the roommate were of this Jason. However, was he also the same person as the body found? You can never be completely sure until there's something more concrete, like fingerprints or DNA. You don't want to give a family false hope. Man, imagine not knowing where your son is for like 20 years. It's hard. Lisa, one of the Facebook group moderators, wanted to approach this carefully though. So first, she reached out and used a lawyer to confirm that this woman was, in fact, the mother of a Jason Callahan. Next, they would need to do a DNA test, and that could take months. But there was a lingering question on everybody's minds. If the Grateful Doe was Jason Callahan, why had he gone unidentified for so long? Eventually, it was revealed, to everyone's surprise, that the mother had never submitted a missing persons report for him. The hell? Why? At that moment, it was unclear. But to get the DNA testing done, Margaretta had to officially file that report first. She described him as having wavy blonde hair and brown eyes, between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet 0 inches in height, and about 160 pounds. He was 19 at the time he went missing. But strangely, she described him as having no marks or known tattoos. But the guy totally had tattoos, correct? Yes, but it is possible that he got them after he left home. Also, it had been 20 years, memories tend to get fuzzy. The mother then submitted a sample of her DNA. After that, the communities waited on pins and needles for months. The test finally came back, and it was inconclusive. You gotta be kidding me. The problem was that the DNA given by either parent is random. Your DNA is usually comprised of half from your mother and half from your father. But Jason's father had unfortunately passed away in 2009, never knowing what happened to his son. It's for this reason that acquiring samples from multiple family members on both sides is useful in missing persons cases. So this time, from his father's side, 2 half-sisters, a half-brother, and a cousin submitted samples as well. On December 9, 2015, almost a year after Gray Metal's post on Imager and over 20 years after the crash, a post was submitted on the Facebook group. It read, "Update, the news we have been waiting for. The DNA results are back. Our Grateful Doe is, in fact, Jason Callahan, missing since 1995. I've been sitting here for, how long, in shock. For both the sadness of his family and the fact that here on Facebook we are making a difference. Because of everyone here, this man will finally make his way home. Lisa." On another note, I want this story to do so much more. I really pray that this story gives an important lesson, to report your missing loved ones, or even try to check up on them if you haven't had contact in years. With it was a picture of Jason, reading, "Rest in peace, Jason Callahan." Finally. But why didn't his mother ever report him missing? All those people looking up missing persons reports. No wonder they never found him, it was useless. That was the lingering question. The internet was divided. She was actually receiving a lot of hate online for that. What? I get it, she didn't do things the right way, but leave her alone. She's a grieving mother. Luckily, many also showed support for her, especially on the Facebook group. It turns out the problem was that Margareta didn't know which jurisdiction to file the report in, since her son had been following the Grateful Dead around the country. Jason's half-sister, Shannon Mickelson, said that no one ever really thought to file a report because everyone assumed he wanted to be missing. His mother hoped he was living his life somewhere, married and happy. This news must have been especially devastating. Likely, yes, but it gave them closure. And even if she had wanted to file a report, users on WebSleuths were quick to point out that police often don't take missing persons cases seriously. One user, who had run away in her teens, said when her mother called the police, they told her she was 16 and old enough to do as she pleased. Another user added, "I get very angry when people assume that it's easy to go to the police and that they will automatically agree to take the report." Meanwhile, a user who worked in healthcare explained that many parents had sons or daughters who were young adults and lived wandering lifestyles. They just lost contact with them. The children weren't assumed to be missing or dead. Jason's half-sister, Shannon, went on to express her gratitude. The compassion they have to search for years and years for his identity is something that can't be measured. This is not how I expected to find my brother, yet knowing so many people cared gives me some sort of peace. Meanwhile, Tricia Griffith, the owner of WebSleuths, said in a Huffington Post article about Jason Callahan that she hoped law enforcement would now start to look at the site as a legitimate resource. In the United States alone, about 600,000 missing people and 4,400 unidentified bodies are reported every year. Fortunately, many of those people are found and the bodies identified, but thousands of cases go cold. The Facebook group and subreddit for Jason Callahan are now dedicated to helping identify other unknown persons as well. This just goes to show, the internet doesn't have to be just for TikTok dances and hateful comment sections. Sometimes, communities can come together for the grateful good. Ignoring the lame pun, "You're right," one of them said. It's great when people and appliances come together. What do you say, Howard? Give it another try? Your drum rhythm is above average. I will allow you to rejoin the trio. Great. Let's go finish our practice. Hit it. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe and that thumbs up. It really helps us out. Also, if you liked this video, you might enjoy the one about a group of friends who mysteriously began to die one by one, years after they played in what they thought was falling snow. Click the video on screen to watch now.